Oh, welcome back, y'all, to the Witness Stand. I'm Beverly. Happy Halloween. As I promised, I've got a big story for you tonight. A dark one. A really dark one. It's about a man who became the blueprint for some of Hollywood's biggest and scariest films. That's right. I'm talking about Ed Gein. Spoiler alert! So let me tell you, if you want to see the Netflix docuseries, and I say docuseries because it's not a documentary, if you want to see that, then you might want to turn this off and wait, and then you can get some commentary. And as is all of my commentary, I'm giving you some facts, and there are more facts out there. You can go look for them. But I'm giving you stuff that I found. So just take that as a disclaimer, okay? My kind of story. This is one that may leave you not wanting to go to bed alone tonight, or at least in the dark. Might want to leave a light on. It's the perfect story for Halloween. Now, if you want to continue, then let's talk about the man, the myth. Not really the legend, because he's real. Ed Gein. I say that because every time I think about this, it gives me palpitations. I will tell you that I did watch the Netflix documentary and, the Netflix docuseries. And I knew about this case, but not a lot in depth. I just remember hearing about it. But I think it was 8 parts or 6 parts. I can't remember. But I like to binge watch things, my husband and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. In fact, I would watch 2 shows, and I told my husband that we were going to watch 2 at a time so we could get through it. It was very disturbing. This whole case is very, very disturbing. Okay. So who was it that he influenced in Hollywood? Well, Norman Bates in Psycho. Yeah. Alfred Hitchcock, he didn't write this, but he turned it into a movie, and he loved Ed Gein. Loved it. And then there's Leatherface from Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then there's Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. Remember, he said, rub it on the skin. Okay. But the question here is, how much of what Hollywood tells us is real, and how much is artistic license? Well, you just take that in stride when you watch Netflix. Anyway, Ed Gein was born August 27th in 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, sorry about that, but you grew one. Yeah. Okay. He was born to George and Augusta Gein. Augusta was a strict, religious, zealot, fire, brimstone, and meaner than a yard dog. She preached that women were filthy and that they were all sinful, and so was the world of women. Except for her. She was God's gift, Bible believing. Yeah, she knew it. She knew it all. And Ed absolutely adored her. So Ed and his brother Henry weren't allowed to have friends. They were isolated, homeschooled, and worked the family farm like dogs. They never got to have any fun. They were like servants. Now, after moving to Plainfield, Wisconsin, that isolation deepened. Ed adored his mother. Remember that. She was his whole world. His guide, his jailer, yes, and eventually his undoing. Yep. Folks often ask, did Ed Gein really have a brother? He did, in fact, have a brother, and the brother did die under suspicious circumstances. So, the brothers were out burning brush when the fire got out of control. And so Ed said they got separated. But when he led police back to the scene, he walked them straight to Henry's body. Henry was lying face down with bruises on his head. Now get this. No fire damage. No struggle. Yet it was deemed accidental. This sounds like so many of our criminal cases where there seems to be cover-ups. This was no different. How did he bludgeon himself? You know, how did he not have fire damage? We'll never know. After Henry's death, Ed lived alone with his mother until she died in 1945, and that loss just broke him. This is when he descended into darkness. He boarded up her bedroom like a shrine. It was clean, it was sparkling, and he shut it up. No one could go in there. But the rest of his house had rats, unwashed tables, just filth, just purity filth. And the house, because it wasn't kept up, it just decayed away. He didn't care anything. He didn't care about anything. The house was frozen in time, except for the rats, because his mother would have never had that. Okay, Ed started reading pulp horror magazines, anatomy books. He got real into anatomy books, which led him down a path, I'm telling you right now. And then he looked at pictures and he looked at stories about Nazis, Nazi wars, the Holocaust, and somewhere in all of that mix between that media and then his mother dying, something inside him just snapped. And he was no longer the Ed Gein, who was kind of odd in the first place, but not like this, not like this. He began grave robbing. Yes, he did. Now, some people say that he was a mass murderer. No, he wasn't. Or a serial killer. Let me change that out. Unless you consider two serial killers. A serial killer who killed two. I don't know. But that wasn't his thing. He wasn't after the kill. He was after body parts. Skin, especially. So he would dig up women, especially fresh graves. He would dig them up, and he tried to find women that reminded him of his mother. So that means that he would have to find out what she looked like, or it had to be people in town that he knew. So maybe like the dark hair, the fair complexion, that kind of thing. But what he did was he borrowed these bodies. Now, I don't know if he ever put them back. I never read that. I read that he borrowed them, but I don't know what he did to the rest of the body. I don't know if he buried it. And I kind of wonder this. If he's going out into the graveyard cemetery at night and digging up bodies, don't you think eventually somebody would have seen him? And what about the next day? The next day, people are going into the cemetery. And let's just say they don't. The next person that dies is going to see this grave or these graves that have been tarnished in some way. The ground has been disturbed. Yeah, let's say it that way. Anyway, he wanted to make things with them. So he made furniture, clothing, masks, things that you just can't unsee. Once you've seen it, you're done for. On November 16th, 1957, Plainfield, Wisconsin, Bernice Warden. She was a local hardware store owner. She disappears. The register shows the last sale of the morning was a gallon of antifreeze sold to Ed Gein. This was his undoing. He got a little sloppy. But, you know, he was a disturbed man and he was kind of a simpleton. And then, yeah, police found him after that. So when the police, speaking of police, when they go to his home, they found things that, again, they couldn't unsee, but things that made them sick, things that messed with their heads for a long, long time. They found Bernice hanging in the shed, decapitated, gutted, and strung up like a deer. Inside the house, investigators found a collection of horrors. There were skull bowls. That's right, he used skulls for bowls. Skin lampshades, masks, even a belt made of nipples. Yes, that is real. Most infamous of all was they found a woman's suit. We're going to go back to Buffalo Bill with that one. But a woman's suit. And he was designing that so that Ed could become his mother. When questioned, Gein wasn't the grunting, savage monster that movies show. He was calm. He was polite. He was almost shy. That was kind of the way he was. He said, yes, sir, no, ma'am. He answered like a man caught stealing apples, not human skin. Now, a lot of people ask, did he really sound like that slow, eerie voice in the Netflix series? Not even close. He had a quiet, flat, and nervous Midwestern, not menacing voice. The real Ed was unsettling because he sounded normal. That, I find, is probably the worst for me. He seemed normal. Ed Gein was found insane and sent to Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. He later moved to the Mendota Mental Health Institute, where he lived the rest of his life. While he was at the mental institute, they deemed him schizophrenic and gave him medication, and it changed him. He was a gentle, shy, quiet person, which he always was, but there was no recognition of Ed, the Ed that had been. So being on medication, it made him less insane, but he was so messed up that if not on medication, he would probably continue to do the things he was doing. And if they deemed him not insane, he would have gone into a regular prison. And you might say that that's the perfect thing for this person, but this is a really sad case of mental health if I ever saw one. That does not take anything away from the victims, the 2 murdered, and the rest of them that were dug up. And their families. Oh my God, their families. So while he was at the Institute, he read adventure books, he did chores, he never caused any trouble. The nurses called him polite, and he died in 1984 at the age of 77. He was peaceful right up to the end. After his arrest, Hollywood went wild. So they created Psycho, Norman Bates first. He was the quiet boy with the mommy issues. If you've never seen Psycho, oh my God, where have you been? Living under a rock? If you have never seen it, you must see it. You cannot go through life without having seen Psycho. Now, the other 2, I never saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I knew, well, it was on TV some, but I never watched it. I don't like it. And then Silence of the Lambs with Buffalo Bill. That was one of those cerebral kind of movies. That had Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins, I think that was who he was. Oh my God, it was scary, and gory. But again, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs. So let's be clear about this. Gein didn't use chainsaws. He did not stalk people, and did not stalk people through the woods, and he wasn't a cannibal. So, if you haven't seen the others, I'm not going to tell you about the cannibalism, but you know what it was. That is Hollywood, all Hollywood, and it's what if storytelling at its best. So that kind of gruesome details and people really sparked Hollywood's imagination, and they went after it, and they went after it big time. And a lot of it was from Ed Gein. But Ed Gein never did the things that were in these movies. The only thing that I know of that you could match up would be Psycho and the mommy issues. I definitely think the mommy issues, which makes you kind of wonder about that. Do all criminally no, let's not go criminally insane. Do all psychotic murderers and these types of people all have mommy issues? Because that worries me a little bit with my own kids. But I think I would have seen it by now. Just saying. Okay, so some oddities and some facts. I think it's really interesting to say that some of the strange facts about Ed Gein that did not make the cut. He was obsessed with National Geographic and anatomy photos. A few things about Ed Gein, little oddities. He was obsessed with National Geographic and anatomy photos. Wonder why. He kept okay. This is hard to say. When the police went into his house and they found all that stuff, they opened up a box. If you are disturbed, this is the time, because this is very disturbing. They found that he kept 9 vulvas in a shoebox. And he once made a lampshade out of a woman's face. Locals said that he was odd, but he was harmless. They didn't know all of this stuff. And guess what? He even was the town babysitter. That's right. People trusted him with their kids, and he babysat for everybody in the town. I guess parts of him were gentle souls, and he never harmed a kid, but oh my God, can you just imagine that? So the truth about Ed Gein isn't in the gore, it's the psychology. That's where the real Ed Gein lies. He wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. He was a lonely man, twisted by grief, guilt, and a warped devotion to his mother. The real horror about Ed Gein was that he looked normal. He's like your neighbor, your neighborhood grocer. Maybe he's your doctor. Maybe he's the man that lives around the corner that walks the dog and stops by your house and speaks to you every day. Maybe, and I've always wondered, how many times in our life have we been that close to some major tragedy like that? And as we walk through our days, do we pass serial killers? It's a thought, isn't it? But we wouldn't know because most people don't look like serial killers because they're not like Leatherface. But then look at Ted Bundy. People loved him. Before he got caught, and then while he was in prison, he kept getting love letters. Would you be comfortable with that, ladies? I can't imagine. So, this Halloween, we're not just talking about monsters. We're talking about the mirror reflections. What do you see in the mirror when you look in there? What grief, isolation, and obsession can you do or can you feel when no one's watching? Could you be someone who could hurt someone? Or do you know someone? Or will you be looking at your neighbors a little bit differently now? I'm Beverly from the Witness Stand, and I wish you the happiest of Halloweens. Love you much. And at this point in time, you may step off the witness stand.